inside, I think it really messed with me. I think I was depressed for a while. I was never really in good health, and I put on even more weight. When I finally started taking care of my health, they weighed me at 512 pounds.
Hey guys, it's Donnie here, and I just want to let you know that we've recently launched a content development company, and this company helps people get social content. You know you need to put out a lot of content nowadays to get engagement out there in all your social platforms. Well, we've come up with a really cool way to help you get videos, blog posts, memes, social posters, and infographics for whatever social site you need. So check us out at successchamps.us and learn more about how you can get social content for your social media.
Support for this podcast comes from Point Blank Safety Services and Blue Family Fund. Blue Family Fund, helping dependents of law enforcement families on their journeys. Blue Family Fund is a nonprofit that raises funds and offers financial support through higher education scholarships for dependents of law enforcement officers and by providing financial assistance for families of fallen law enforcement officers. Every dollar donated will go to the families of police officers, either through scholarships to dependents of police officers or as aid to fallen officers' families. Visit us at bluefamilyfund.com.
You're listening to Donnie Success Champions, where I believe everybody is on a journey. Life is all about the stories you can tell and teach later. You're going to hear the stories of people who have overcome hardships, failures in life to find success along their journey.
All right, guys, I've been looking forward to this episode. So I've had a couple of people tell me that I got to sit down with Max and have this conversation. So we finally made it happen, and I'm really, really looking forward to this. So I'm bringing my newfound friend, Mr. Maxwell Ivey, to the show. Max, brother, welcome to the party. Please share your story with us.
Well, thank you for having me on the show. I'm glad we could finally make it happen. I tell people that hosts don't book you, they book your story, so I'm more than happy to start with my story. I grew up in a family of carnival owners in Texas, and all I ever really wanted to do was go into the family business. My dad had other ideas. He used to tell us he didn't want any of us kids having anything to do with the carnival world. He used to say, come on, this is the only business I know where insanity isn't a disqualification. It may actually be a necessity.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but we disobeyed him, and I was lucky enough to get to run the business alongside him for about 11 years before he died of cancer, and then a few years after that, our small family carnival went out of business.
Was this a traveling carnival?
Yeah, it was a traveling carnival. We traveled mostly Texas, but in the summers we would go as far as Missouri or Tennessee, sometimes Alabama, a couple times South Carolina. We were always in search of that mythical thing of a full calendar of good events every week, which is very difficult to do when you have 8 rides and most of the shows you're booking against have 10 or 12 or 15 or a lot more than us. People used to wonder how we managed to keep getting bookings, and I would tell them, well, it's a combination of things. One, nobody wants to not have a carnival, so in some cases we're the only people they can get. I said, but there are a lot of times we got bookings by events that were way too big for us because they just liked my dad. They felt he was a straight shooter, which, on the important things he always was. We talked about how he was a good storyteller, but on things that mattered, like the gross and the committee's end of the ride income, he was always straight with them on that. And there was many times we would go into an event after a bigger carnival had told them they no longer were interested, and we would turn in more money because we were giving them the actual count they were supposed to be getting,
Right.
And more than once he told the committee chairman that would ask him, well, Max, how do we know we can trust you? And he would go, well, why don't y'all just sell the tickets? That way it'll save me two people I won't have to pay that week.
Smart man.
Yeah, he would get to their, nowadays we would say getting to their pain point. He would get to their fear, which is, I'm going to do the work and get all these people out here for you, and you're going to make the money, and I'm not going to see none of it. So he would get to their fear, and he would take care of it. So he was also really good about if anything bad happened while we were open, even if it was just people disappointed rather than anything serious, he would always take care of it. And one of my favorite examples is we were doing an event where there was more than one carnival involved, and one of the fellows we had selling tickets for us got into a dispute over the wristband. You know, those things you buy where it lets you ride as many rides as you want. And my dad went up to him and he said, just give them back the money. And the fellow was continuing to argue. He said, give them back the money. And when he finally did just, force the guy to refund the armbands, he said, look, the whole time you've been arguing with one customer, people have been standing in line waiting to give you their money. And that was, kind of the approach he had to stuff. If it came down to, is this going to cost me money or make me money? And unless it was something that just totally went against who he was, he would usually side with whatever would make him money. In that particular case, causing a stir in front of your ticket box was not good for business.
Sounds like a really, really, really smart man. Good guy to follow in his footsteps if you go up through your career.
Yeah. And then after he died, after our carnival went out of business, we ended up working with my uncle's carnival. And over the years, we competed very bitterly with my uncle to the point that it was like, come on, we don't have to lose to them, do we?
Wait, were these guys brothers?
Yeah, they were my mom's younger brother. We had actually competed with them as if we were two separate businesses. Like,
I'll be damned.
Yeah, and that sometimes happens with families where the families all lived on one big, about 6-acre piece of land for a good part of my growing up years. So there's a thing that comes with being too close to your family. And
so you guys almost had your own Hatfields McCoys going on.
Yeah, and more than once over the years, my dad was supposed to be dying. More than once, our equipment was supposed to have been repossessed. More than once, we were supposed to stand people up for better events. More than once, mail was stolen, voicemails were deleted. It was very, very competitive. I'm like, come on, isn't there somebody else we can lose to? I don't want to be part of these people. And, while I never, said it openly because I knew better, inside, I think it really messed with me. I think I was depressed for a while. I was never really in good health, and I put on even more weight. When I finally started taking care of my health, they weighed me at 512 pounds, but, we've got pictures where it looks like I was over 600 because I just wasn't happy being there. I did not want to be there. My dad was one of those kind of people, he never really cared to be on another man's midway anyway. So to be on another man's midway who openly did not like me and wanted me to fail were not good for me. And eventually, my cousin did me the big favor of running me out of business on his midway with my kid's game to the point where I'm like, okay, this is done. I'm through here. What do I do next? And that was when I said, over the years, I've helped my dad sell surplus rides because when you have a small company, you can't buy newer stuff unless you can sell the older stuff. So I felt like, well, maybe I could do that. And so in 2007, I decided to go full-time, applied for a domain name, which I had been thinking about for a long time, but just hadn't got off my butt and done because I kept thinking, well, maybe something will get better and I won't have to do this. But eventually, we did an event in Groves, Texas, where we had perfect weather. My game booth was stocked with lots of licensed toys, lots of people on the midway. I didn't get any of their money, and my cousin got all of their money. So I said, so I filed for the domain name, and then I'm like, okay, Max, you got a website. What the hell are you going to do with it? How are you going to do it? And in the beginning, my brother Michael, who is one of those people who has an extra gene, who understands all things tech and electronic and computers and websites and all that stuff, he seems to inhale the stuff, and he built me a website where I really didn't have to know what I was doing. All I had to do was use the thing from, one of those, I guess you'd call it a widget that he found, where I could upload a ride description or a game photo, and I could tell people, hey, come to the website and look at it. But he got a high-paying job moving those big, spectacular rides for the state fairs and the tri-county fairs. So then I had a website and no way to update it or maintain it or improve it. No money to hire somebody, and probably wouldn't have been willing to put my faith in somebody else to, turn the keys to the car over to somebody else if I had the money to hire somebody at that point. So I went online, started asking a bunch of stupid questions in forums, and eventually somebody sent me to the W3C.org school for designing a website, because as a blind person, and I am totally blind, I couldn't use the what you see is what you get options. And Drupal never made any sense to me, which was, it's kind of like a competitor to WordPress.
Now, hold on, let me jump in here just one second, Max, because you finally said it, and I want to make sure people understand. You grew up in the carnival with lights, scenes, candy, displays, toys, crowds, all that kind of stuff, and helped your old man run a carnival. Series of events happen, and you go out of business. But you're doing this the entire time blind.
Yeah. But I actually think my particular kind of blindness has helped me over the years, because I have retinitis pigmentosa, or what's called RP. I knew at the age 4 that I was going to be losing my vision. We just never knew exactly how much of it or how soon. So from 4, I had perfect vision. By 12 or 13, I had a big drop-off, which is pretty common for men with RP. When they go through puberty, will have a big loss of vision. So junior high school, I'm using a white cane. I'm learning orientation and mobility skills. I'm learning Braille. I'm switching from regular print to large print, eventually to audiobooks and Braille textbooks. So over the years, I've always had to adjust to different circumstances. My vision has never been the same, well, it is now. But, for years, I never really knew what my vision was going to be from year to year, or what tools I'd be able to use, or what games I'd be able to play, or what toys I'd be able to play with. So I think the constant adaptation over the years prepared me for now when you're doing something online, this stuff is always changing. What worked last week might not work this week. And there are lots of gurus charging big money for courses and for techniques that worked when they were doing them, but that doesn't mean they're working now or they'll work for you. So there's a lot of fluidity in the online world. Just an example I recently ran into. I use WordPress for my websites. They recently merged with something called Gutenberg, which I still don't know what the hell that is. But it's going to change the way people build, maintain, and improve their websites in WordPress. It's going to make big changes in the back end on that stuff. And it's going to take a while before the plug-in developers can catch up with it. So who knows, for the next, 2 or 3 years, maintaining a WordPress-based website, which is, a big percentage of people that are online, they have to struggle through a whole bunch of stuff that they just don't know what the heck it is.
Well, I got to tell you, kudos, because I can't keep up with changes, with all my programs and websites and everything else. So I outsource all that crap. Well, 1, I don't want to do it, but 2, when I tried to do it, it's tough. I can't imagine, having to keep up with it, and you don't have your eyesight in front of you to always know. So you got to have all kinds of programs and everything that are either reading the updates or something. How does all that work?
Well, as far as the basic tech part of it goes, I'm a Mac user. I have a MacBook, an iPad, and iPhone, and they all come with speech built into them. Most of the apps that you run on them are at least somewhat accessible, and with the new Siri shortcuts, there are ways you can make them more user-friendly to somebody who's blind, but it may take a little sighted assistance in the beginning.
Right.
As far as, just keeping up with what's coming down the road, a lot of that has to do with people that I have met online and built relationships with. Some of them podcast hosts, and hopefully going forward, me and you are going to be friends.
Oh, no, I don't even like you, Max. Heck with you.
Well, that's good. As long as we know where we stand right up front. I don't mind being hated as long as you're not subtle about it.
Right. No, I'm a black and white guy. You always know.
There you go. But as far as the Gutenberg thing is, I was actually giving a speech at WordCamp New York City a few weeks back, and there was a couple of talks on how Gutenberg is going to change WordPress. Now, I'm one of these people, I'm getting better at outsourcing things. I have an editor who takes my manuscripts and turns them into books. I have a stylist now who I mentioned to you before the show because I wanted to make sure I looked good. And I'm still not sure because you're one of those, really funny guys who,
Dude,
who still has me guessing. And so, because basically 30 minutes ago, I didn't even know I was talking to you today. I came home sick as a dog 2 weeks ago, and I still can't sing right. I can at least talk now, but so, 30, 40 minutes. And I told you when we started this, could you please tell me, because if I don't look good, my stylist is going to give me crap about it later, because she spent a lot of time making me look pretty, And,
well, I told you that polka dotted tie and neon green.
Yeah, well, that's because my favorite tie still hasn't come back from the laundry from my last trip.
You're good, brother. You look amazing.
I'm good. I'm glad. Well, see, because that's actually becoming part of my shtick. That because people say about Max, if Max can do it, then what's your excuse? And so I'm hoping that the fact that my stylist can teach me how to put myself together and go out looking like the rock star that I am on the inside is going to challenge a lot more men to think, just because I get away with my T-shirt and my torn jeans, or just because I get away with a jacket over a denim shirt or whatever, doesn't mean that's best for me as far as making a good appearance and sending the right message for my brand,
Absolutely.
So I'm hoping, and she's hoping that it will become part of this whole, well, Max looks pretty good. What's your excuse? Max is doing the website and recording videos and hosting his own podcast. So, what are your excuses? So that's what we're hoping.
I like it, brother. I like it. So after your daddy passes away, you kind of go in some sort of a downward spin in your life, end up having to go work for your uncle, who you didn't care for. It was going to be a tough ride. Basically get run off of him, decided to get into websites and everything else. And then that didn't work out. So what happened from there?
Well, the websites have been working out real good. Even though the website in the early days was not real physically pretty, I have used it to help people sell some pretty nice rides, including several that cost over $250,000. It's not an easy way to make money. I probably have an easier time being a blogger and an author than I do selling people's rides, but it gives me a lot of satisfaction because most of those people that come to me have been trying on their own for a while. They haven't been successful, and they have a real need, either personally or within their family, to sell that ride so they can move on to another ride, possibly retire from the business. Last year, I sold a stage for a magician in Florida, and his whole thing was he had to sell the stage so he could retire. And I felt really good about helping him sell his stage, and now there's a carnival owner in Georgia that is renting his stage out to fairs whenever he comes to town. So it's a very satisfying work, but it's not very profitable. So yeah, mainly people started saying, Max, you're really inspirational. We really feel like after being around you, we feel like we should be doing more. So I started a second blog, and when I ask people what I should call myself, they're like, Max, we've been calling you the blind blogger for a year or two now. If that isn't taken, then that's who you should be, because that's how we think of you. So I started theblindblogger.net. I started blogging about my experiences being an entrepreneur who happens to be blind. And also, I share things that happen to me or things that I run across during the day or the week, and the lessons people can take from those. And it's been a pretty good experience as far as the blog. I started a podcast called What's Your Excuse, where I have people on and, have them share their stories, kind of like you're letting me do here. And it's led to 3 books. It's led to public speaking. And I really, have no idea where it's going to lead to next, but I'm enjoying the experience, and I have a lot of fun when I come on and have conversations with people like you.
No, that's awesome. So you start the Blind Blogger, right? And you got, that going, and it's taking off, and now you've got somewhat of a name for yourself, and you're on stage doing public speaking, and you're inspiring folks to go for it and do more in life, and proving that, anybody can do whatever the hell they want through what you're doing. What do you typically talk about, when you're on stage? Is it more educational or is it inspirational? What is it?
Well, I like to refer to myself as an entertaining, inspirational, motivational storyteller.
So you're just waiting for them to check all the boxes when they're looking for a speaker.
Well, I never thought about that, but I believe in total honesty, and so yes, now that you've pointed it out to me, yes, that does check all the boxes. I should also include hilarious or humorous or something that makes them know that I will make them laugh. Because my recent talk at WordCamp, after I walked off the stage, I was told, Max, that was the most entertaining and one of the most inspirational we had all weekend. I was like, I feel good about both of those, but I kind of would have liked it if it had been the other way around. But, I do come from carnival people. I do have this promoter thing in me where I like to help other people get their names out there and get exposure. I like to think that, that somewhere in my DNA, there's aspects of Barnum and Colonel Parker and Justin Timberlake and some of these other great, I like to think it's in there somewhere. So yeah, I checked all the boxes, and thanks for calling me out on that.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Hey, if I wasn't a smart ass, I'd have no ass at all. So
there you go. You go.
What was it like growing up in a carnival? I mean, because I've got some friends that do Renaissance fairs, and they're still called Rennies, and they do travel around doing that kind of stuff. What is that lifestyle like?
Well, it's a lot different now than it was when I was growing up, because now it's much more corporate. People spend a lot more money on their trucks and their housing, and it's no longer seasonal. When I was growing up, back then school ended Memorial Day and didn't start back up again till Labor Day. So during those 3 months of the summer, we would be wherever the carnival was. But that last month and a half or so, when school was still in, but the festival season started, we would stay with relatives, usually my grandmother or one of my aunts. Same thing in the fall. The family would still be up in Nebraska or Minnesota working, and we'd be back in school. So that's different. And, back then my grandmother had a motorhome, and I think there was her, my mom and dad, me and my brother living with her in what most people wouldn't even consider a good sized RV for one person anymore. And there was really just the beginning of starting to see travel trailers and motorhomes in, what you'd call the price ranges where, less than rich people or celebrities could afford to own them and use them. So, when I was growing up, there were still people in my family who lived in tents when they traveled. That was just the thing, the big difference. Nowadays, it's year round. Nowadays, some of these people live in travel trailers that are 2 stories and cost over $1 million. My family was never like that. I've got a cousin. He bought his travel trailer used, but it probably cost, it probably cost 5 or 6 figures. But they work year round. They travel from the Valley in Texas all the way to Missouri and back during the course of their year. The equipment costs a lot more money. It doesn't last as long because you're working it 11 and a half months out of the year instead of 6 or 7. You're open more hours because there's more shopping centers and less festivals or fairs. So it's changed a lot. But when I was growing up, we had 4 families out of 6. My mom had 5 brothers and sisters. Of the 6 children, her side of the family, 4 of them were in the carnival business. 1 was in the carnival business, but then went into preaching, and 1 was a surveyor. So
interesting. So did you have all the acrobats and?
No. We had a carnival, not a circus, but sometimes we did have what they would call a free act, which would mean there would be like maybe a 1-ring circus performer, or there would be live animals like snakes or cats that would travel with you. And they called them a free act because the show owner, when he went to book an event, if the other guy had more rides than you did, one of the ways you would overcome that is you would go, okay, I'll give you a free act. And that meant you would bring them something where you were paying the performer or the animal owner, but you would give it to the committee for free. Sometimes it would be a wrestling deal. I've got friends in Louisiana who are related to Chief Little Wolf, who was one of the famous carnival wrestlers back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. So, sometimes that free act would be a boxing or a wrestling exhibition. And of course, the exhibition, this is back in the day where people who were visiting the fair could compete with the boxer or the wrestler, and if they won, they got paid. So those kind of things would occasionally, but we never had, you never had circuses mixing with carnivals back then. Nowadays, at events, you will see both at major fairs. And for one winter, when we had some rides we were trying to keep, we were short on the payments. So one winter we traveled with Otto Barasini, who had a 1-ring circus, but it was a pretty impressive 1-ring circus. He worked with 4 different kinds of cats in his finale and had quite a few lions and tigers. It's a pretty good organization for a 1-ring circus. But
Wow.
Usually carnivals and circus didn't associate, and there was a time where if you had implied that I might be circus people, I'd have to fight you.
I didn't realize that was like a thing, you know.
It used to be. It used to be. You know, that's another thing that's changed over the years. There's no longer the big thing between circuses and carnivals or between carnies and gypsies. You know, it's all gotten very corporate and very high dollar about making the money as quickly as you can during the hours you get. And as long as everybody knows that they've all had a fair shot at getting the bookings, there's usually no problems. I mean, another thing that's different, back in the day, if you owned a Ferris wheel or an octopus, the guy who operated that ride was key to it making money for you. So if somebody came along and offered your Ferris wheel operator more money, you might go over to his midway and beat him up and encourage your Ferris wheel operator to come back to work for you. That was like in the 50s.
Was that because they were good at the cat calling and get people?
No, they were good at the loading and the unloading, getting people on and off as quickly as possible. Also, they were good at setting it up and taking it down and making sure it was ready to operate safely, because with the new Ferris wheel, it's all electronic. It's all steel and aluminum and steel wound cables. But in the old days, a Ferris wheel, the two sides of the wheel were kept in sync with each other with cable. And so the guy who set that ride up and the guy who operated it, they had to be, you know, the better they were at their job, the more money you made.
Nice.
So,
nice.
But that stuff doesn't happen anymore. Like I said, it's an example of how things have changed.
Right.
Because, you know, nowadays there are single rides on midways that are being, you know, they're not moved every week. They're moved maybe every 3 or 4 weeks and play only the biggest fairs. But there are rides on midways nowadays that cost over $1 million for one ride.
Right.
When my grandfather started his carnival in the 50s, the first ride he ever bought was an octopus. He paid $7,500 for it, and it came with the semi-trailer that he hauled it up and down the road with. You can't buy the tires for a semi-trailer for $7,500 nowadays.
Right. That's awesome. Did you guys have the ever famous, you know, growing up, the thing was always, you know, the runaways who ran off and joined the circus, or, you know.
We never had anybody who ran away and joined the carnival, but we did have people who would come join the carnival for the week we were in town. And some of them would go far enough as to come out to the next town and you know, and help guide a truck to the next lot to make sure they got hired, you know. My dad actually ran away with the circus. He got tired of being on the carnival one year, and he heard that the circuses paid year-round because there was no end to the circus season. So he hired on as the gang that sets up and takes down the bleachers. And back then, this is like in the 50s or 60s, they were paying $1 a day plus room and board plus all the tobacco you could smoke. And after a few weeks of setting up bleachers and taking down bleachers, he quit. He said that was too hard a work for anybody to do, no matter what they paid him. But he did it for a while, you know. But that was, my dad had kind of a restless thing. That's why when I told you earlier that sometimes in the summers we would go to different parts of the country trying to fill out our calendar. He always felt like, you know, that if we just went to the right territory, if we, you know, there was a way we could fill out our calendar even with the number of rides we had. So he was kind of a restless guy. And funny thing is, I found out later that my dad's side of the family, at least my grandfather and my father, also were in the carnival business. My grandfather, who was a singer, guitar player, who had his own radio show in the 30s, he used to work the Lucky Strike pitch, where they would pitch dimes at the labels off the Lucky Strike cigarette packages to win a teddy bear. And he later worked what they call the rat wheel, which really wasn't a rat, it was a mouse, but it was a wheel with a bunch of holes in it, and they would turn the rat loose, and people would bet on what color hole the rat would go into. So my grandfather worked the rat wheel on the Lucky Strike pitch. My dad worked the mic on the rat wheel, and then he worked something called a six cat, which is another game that's no longer on midways, mainly because it was one of those games where the only way you won was if the operator wanted you to win. So, you know, it's one of those games that's had to go by the wayside because it's just not legal. It's not fair. It's not right. And there's so many other games that, you know, where people have a relatively, you know, even chance of winning, that there's no reason for you to put up a game like the six cat anymore.
Yeah. You know, when you know, as a
person who went to a lot of carnivals, especially as a kid, you know, we lived in a small country town, so, you know, if a carnival came through, you know, that was like big deal, you know.
Yeah.
And you always wondered as a kid is how rigged these damn games were, but you couldn't win any damn thing at them.
Well, when you were a kid, they were probably pretty rigged, okay? I'm honest enough with myself to admit that. But just like you know, there are a lot of other industries that didn't start out so great in the early days that over the years have realized or have been prodded by regulations to, you know, to change their ways somewhat. And then we have some companies like, you know, like Walmart that, you know, basically are still taking their best shot, but they get away with it because they're rich. You know, they're multi-billion-dollar organizations, so they get away with that stuff. But there are lots of, and over the years, the carnivals have gotten safer. There are more inspections nowadays by the states, by the owners, by the insurance companies. The equipment is being built with more attention to safety from the beginning. And in a lot of states in the United States now, you cannot even bring a ride into the country to operate it unless it passes an engineer's review. And all that stuff is done on computers, and the tolerances are measured down to microns. And if there's even the least little chance that somebody could get hurt on a ride when the ride is operating like it's supposed to, you know, it can't be sold here. So that's changes that have happened in the industry that are good. You know, you were talking about how when you were a kid, when the carnival came to town, it was a big deal. Well, my dad and me, we've had conversations over the years where we thought one of the worst things that ever happened to the carnival business was the loss of the county fairs and the town festivals, because, you know, when carnivals set up on shopping centers, you lose the novelty, you lose the experience, the wonder, the excitement of the carnival coming to your town once a year, like you said. And when people knew you were coming to town once a year, they would save up for that year. They would ask their vacations for that year.
Yep.
You know, we went to towns in Alabama and Tennessee where if you wanted to go to a restaurant the week of the festival, you better be prepared to wait because half their help was at the carnival.
Right.
You know, let's just say one of the ways things have changed, probably for the better, but it does mean that with the increase in the amount of money that's involved, there are quite a few towns and even some counties that are no longer getting carnivals or that are having to buy their own rides in order to put on a festival.
Yeah, and I will say, you know, going to a carnival as a kid at the county fair, because that was always where it was, at the county fairgrounds, you know, we were in 4-H, and, you know, we were showing horses, and they'd have the rides and things there. That was a fun experience because, like you said, you're completely into that whole scene and everything else. As an adult, going to a mall carnival, I don't want to say it felt cheesy, but that's the best word I got for it.
It feels fake. It feels less. It's like it's cheating you of the good feelings you associate with going to a carnival.
Yeah.
So I agree with you there, but you know that's just the way things change, and you know sometimes in order to improve or in order to make things better for the people that are involved, so it's sustainable, things have to change that maybe the rest of us don't like. You know,
well, let me ask you, you know, growing up in that world, which is a cool world to grow up in. I love hearing people's stories like that. How do you think growing up in that lifestyle prepared you for some of the things you're doing now in life?
Oh, I think, again, I had one host who said, you know, Max, after hearing about your life in the carnival, I have to believe you have a PhD in hustle and bustle. Because I mean, think about it. It's one of those industries where nobody cares about you. They could care less if your truck broke, if a part on the ride broke. They could care less if the generator's down or if you had to travel farther than you really should have agreed to travel. All they want to know is, can I buy my funnel cake? Can I ride the Ferris wheel? Can I win me stuffed animal on Thursday night? That's all they care about, all they want to know about. So, you know, you get into this, okay, we don't have any excuses. No matter what happens, we've got to get open somehow, some way. And my dad used to tell us all the time, he's like, well, you know, we've never missed an opening, but nobody's ever going to give us any style points.
Right.
and more than once we made opening, but the next day we may have had to go out and put valley cloth. The canvas goes around the bottom of the rides, or we may have had to go straighten the fence, or, you know, there may be a bunch of little things that we should have done.
Yeah, but nothing.
Safety oriented. They weren't safety oriented. They were cosmetic stuff, and if we had done them, we wouldn't have opened, kind of stuff. So he's like, So, he was really my first, the whole no excuses teacher. The business and my dad was like, and more than once, me being blind, a lot of times I would ride with him when he went out to make the next to last or last trip to get us to the next town. I'd be with him sometimes to help him change a tire or jack up the trailer so we could get the truck under it, and sometimes me and him would have to load stuff. Like one time we went out to pick up a moonwalk that we had rented. The moonwalk weighed 700 and something pounds. It was one of those big 25 by 25s with an inflatable rainbow over the top of it. And me and him, we rolled it and we walked it and we got it as small as we could. We used a 4x8 sheet of plywood, a rope with one of those knots in it that you can slide and tighten as you pull it. Yep. And me and him, we grunted our way to getting that moonwalk up on the back of that truck that we brought it there with. And we get to the next town. They're like, how the hell did y'all do that? And my dad first words out of his mouth were, what, did we have an excuse? Was there another option? Could we left it there? And that was the way he thought about things. And I agree, those are great lessons. And I feel like people who grow up in families that run businesses, especially small businesses, whether they be farms, ranches, carnivals, or painting, lawn care, whatever these businesses are, you learn a lot of hard lessons about getting by with less resources and time than you would like to have. Finding solutions that are creative because you just can't do it the way you want to do it or the way everybody else does it. The whole idea of not worrying about how you look doing it as long as you get it done. Those are things that you learn when you run a business, and probably more so with a carnival because, like I say, if you don't open on Thursday, they will not be happy.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, a couple of interesting things that just popped in my head is one, when you're blind and you're moving something that's 700 pounds, was it something like, your dad looking at you and going, stand here and pull like hell?
That's what he would do, yeah. He would go, okay, Max, we're going to stand here and push that way, We used to have a ride, and I really hated it when we sold it because it was my favorite ride. It was my favorite because it was the one they let me help with the most. And basically, since I'm blind, I can't protect myself from falling equipment or stuff being thrown while you work. I mean, come on, be honest. When guys are working with heavy steel, they say things and throw things, so you just never know. So the only time they would let me work was if my dad or one of my brothers was working with me. They kind of look out for me. But the other thing is it had to be something where they had to have my help. So if they didn't have to have my help, they wouldn't get me. Right. And I used to have this baseball uniform from a beat baseball team I played with for a little while, and it had number 25 on it. And they used to joke about, Max, you're our 12th man. If you have to come off the bench, something really bad has happened. Just be prepared. And I've still got this shirt. It's got grease on it that they're never come out of this shirt. But we used to have this roller coaster. It wasn't a dragon wagon because we never had nothing that nice. It wasn't a go-gator. It was what's called a shift coaster. And it had a 13 or 14 foot tall hill. It had 16 pieces of track. And each one of those pieces of track was heavy. But, I was a big, strong guy. I would grab one side of the track. Two other guys would grab the other side of the track. And I would basically just follow the piece of track to where it needed to go. And they would go, okay, Max, lift. And they would tell me up or down or left or right until it fit into the slot. And they put the pin and the key in it to make it part of the ride. I used to love that ride because I knew every week they were going to have to come get me to help set up and carry down that coaster. And one time somebody looked at it and they go, why is there just one guy on that side and two guys on the other side? And they said, there's no other guy that could. He's the only guy here that can handle that side. And I finally admitted years later, I said, the reason that there was only one of me on that side and the reason I only used my left hand was because my right shoulder is crap. Over the years of sleeping on bad beds and just, arthritis and whatever in that shoulder, it hurts to lift stuff. So I always went with just my left hand, and I was the only guy on the right side of the track. And I would, like you said, I would just follow the track to where it wanted to go, and I would hold it till they pinned it. And, a few years ago, I was co-authored a blog post that said 16 things about being blind, advantages of being blind. And one of them in there was nobody will ever ask you to move. And after I almost didn't publish that. I said, come on, Lorraine. People who know me are going to know that I can't say this with a straight face because after you've helped people move roller coasters and tilt-a-whirls, they know you can help move.
Right. All right, you can't use that excuse anymore, buddy. You stand there and hold this and just follow along.
Just grab the back end of that coffee table. We're going up 3 flights of stairs. You're coming with us. Yeah.
Well, that's like the old saying is that's the only reason you don't buy a pickup truck, because once you get a pickup truck, everybody becomes your friend when it comes moving day.
This is true. This is very, very true. But, in Texas, not that I hunt, but in Texas, a pickup truck can also make you friends with hunters and fishers. So
yes, it can.
It can be a break even. It can be a break even.
Only thing that would trump that would be having a hunter fishing leash,
That's true. That too. That's why quite a few people in Texas have what they call fishing ponds, where they fish for their own fish.
Yep. That's awesome.
Here you got a blind guy. He can't see what he's doing, but they found ways for me to participate in the business because they knew that's what I wanted to do. And I think it's a great metaphor for the fact that there's lots of ways that people can do more in their own lives or their own businesses or their own friendships and relationships if they just decide, okay, instead of finding excuses, instead of making up reasons, I'm going to spend my time trying to think up ways that I can participate or grow or reach out to other people. And that's what I do most of the time. If I'm not reaching out to people asking for stuff for me or offering to do stuff for people, I'm trying to connect people together who I think need to know each other. And those are all lessons that I've learned over those crazy years.
Interesting perspective for you is I'm a little jealous, and here's what I mean by that. Is growing up as a kid, I grew up in a good family. We were poor, but didn't really struggle. I mean, we didn't have a lot of money as we moved through life. So I always lived an okay life. Never had any reason to really go for it. Had really no reason to put myself out there too much. Everything was just good enough, right? So it took me until I was, later in life before I actually tried to go for it and do something with it. Your entire life have had to come from a way of I've always got to prove myself that I can do X, right? I've got to prove to other people.
It was never about proving myself. It was about to other people, but maybe proving myself to myself more than.
Right.
But I'm going to say something here that's very honest, but I think it's going to make you feel better. I've had all this experience in my life about adaptability, of adversity, going for things, and right now I'm what you would call not poor, not rich, getting through life pretty comfortable. I would like to do much better than I'm doing. Here you are, a guy who came from comfort, a guy who didn't really have a deep desire to start his own business, and your podcast is in the top. What did you tell me before we started the show? Tell me, you could. You didn't bragging if I asked you. So give me your stats. Tell people how much ass you're kicking. Give me those stats.
So top 200 on iTunes overall. It was 127 this morning. It stays in the 20s in the business categories. 63 countries. It's doing really damn well.
How many people are listening? Is it hundreds of thousands yet?
No, we're getting there. We're definitely in the tens and 20s of thousands.
So you're a guy who led a comfortable life, had no, kick in the ass to start his own thing, no life tragedy or crisis, no deep desire, and you are killing it. So
yeah, but it took me 40 years to get there, Max. So
I'm 52, and I started my website in 2007. So what would I have been in 2007? This is 18.
Oh God, Max, I'm a Marine. Don't ask me to do math.
I would have been 40 or 41.
Right.
So I kept banging my head against the wall trying to stay in the carnival business for 20 years. If I'd have quit sooner, I'd be a lot farther ahead.
Well, I
can honestly admit that now.
Well, then we kind of have an interesting comparison, because I spent 20 years in the sales game after I got in the Marine Corps, making other people's money because I thought that's what I was supposed to do in life, was bust my ass and, go sell my butt off and help other people out. It wasn't until, I was 40 when I'm like, crap, I've spent my lifetime living somebody else's dreams.
Yeah. So two guys who couldn't be a whole lot different than each other, especially when you consider that you were in the Marines, have basically had a similar path in some areas.
Yeah, no kidding. That's pretty cool.
I'm looking forward to seeing how much farther we can go now that we know each other.
Absolutely. Yeah, I tell you what, I love meeting people that are on stages and speaking. I've done a lot of fun speaking all over the world, and it's fun.
Well, cool. Maybe you can coach me up then, because I need to do. I have yet to do international, and I've yet to get paid cash money. I'd like to do both
Oh,
very soon.
we're definitely going to become friends. I can help out with that. But I'll tell you, at one point, bud, you and I are going to share a stage someplace, somehow.
Well, I like it. I've got a friend in New York City who last month got sick. She couldn't come to my talk. She's like, Max, I feel really bad about it. She said, we should do something. I said, yeah, we should do something. Let's promote an event in New York City where me and you and who knows who else will be on the stage. And I haven't picked a date yet. So if you got some dates in January, February, or March that you like so we can plan something up, I like the idea.
Heck yeah, it'd be fun.
She said she has friends in Dallas, so maybe we won't do it in New York. Maybe we'll do it in the DFW area. It'll be a shorter trip for me. We'll make the rest of them fly. Me and you will I'll just take the bus and you can take your car.
There you go. Oh, why don't you drive?
Shit, they ain't got them driverless cars perfected yet. I hear that the driverless helicopter has got a better chance of happening than the cars do.
Well, I can believe that, but you mean you can't just stick that white pole out the window?
No, and I would like to say that I would take the train to Dallas, but if you take the train to Dallas from Houston, you take a chartered bus from here to Longview first.
Oh wow.
Because because the train from here to Dallas is not meant for part of the Amtrak system. They will put passengers on it, but it takes something like 24 hours for that train to get from Houston to Dallas. It's crazy.
I'll be damned.
Because they have to give way to freight. Amtrak doesn't own the rail. They lease from freight companies all over the country, so they have to give way to the freight company's schedules. So that's why if you want to go from Houston to Dallas, it's 36 hours by train, or you can take a charter bus from Houston to Longview and then a short bus over to Dallas. Well, I am impressed by one thing that y'all have done that we haven't in Houston, and it's actually got me thinking that someday I might want to move to Dallas, like someday I might want to move to New York City. Y'all actually have a light rail that doesn't just do Dallas, but it also does Plano and Mesquite. And
well, stand by is Elon Musk we're the key target to run from. I think it's between Dallas and Austin or Dallas and Houston. He wants
to be part of that plan to build a train to run between Dallas and Houston.
Yeah.
But they're talking like 2030. I mean, but if Elon Musk gets involved in it, it could happen like next year.
Yeah, right.
Now that he has more time to devote to himself, now that he's no longer CEO of Tesla.
Right.
Isn't that a shame? The guy makes one offhanded remark on Twitter. He gets sued for fraud, and he has to resign from his company, pay a $20 million fine, and he was facing not being able to be a member of a publicly traded company anywhere in the United States if he didn't settle. Is that some crazy shit or what?
Yeah, it's just I don't get society. I don't.
People are in too big a hurry to get pissed off and throw a sissy fit. It's just the way it is. There are way too many people, especially on social media, especially on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Not so much LinkedIn, but on Twitter and Facebook, they get up in the morning hoping something will come across their feed that'll give them a reason to get mad.
I agree with that.
But I mean, I'm really sad for him because he's one of the few really great minds, really big-time risk takers we have in the tech world anymore. I mean, I like Bill Gates and what he does in the nonprofit world, what he's doing for schools and the environment and third world countries. But, I mean, come on. When Jobs died, we lost our risk taker. And Musk is the only one we got left.
Yep, I agree with that. Somebody will fill his shoes, though. Somebody will fill his shoes.
I hope so. I'm actually torn. I'm known as a risk taker. But recently I went on a trip to New York City. I was in the middle of a 3-city speaking thing. I got sick as a dog, had to come home. I was so sick my friend wouldn't let me in his pickup truck. So that ought to tell you how bad off I was. He made me get a mask and gloves before he finally let me in. While I was gone, I was thinking they announced that this Japanese guy has bought the rights to Elon Musk's first ship that's going to have people in it. It's going to go and make a circle around the moon and come back. And he's supposed to be going to take some artists and some other creative people with him. And you know what I thought when I first heard that? I was like, I would like to think I'm a big enough risk taker to email that guy and go, hey, why can't I go too? But for some reason, I just can't bring myself to pull the trigger on that one.
Well, get it done. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to call your chicken shit ass out and go. If you don't freaking email that dude and say you need to take a blind guy with you,
Okay, but if he says yes, does it mean it has to be me? I mean, there are other blind people out there it could be.
Prove you're a damn risk taker and
yeah, I know. I told somebody just this week. I said, you know, now that I've survived New York City, I don't think I'm a risk taker anymore. But you know, I have this problem. I hear stuff like that in the news. You know, like yesterday. Okay, I've mentioned my stylist. Her name is Chelsea in the Wind. Our website is cnvisionimage.com. I mentioned people that helped me, so I hope that's okay with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, yesterday I'm watching Kelly and Ryan, and they're having a debate over whether Kelly should have her hair cut short. I'm like, what the hell? My stylist knows as much about this as anybody else does, so I sent them an email. Go, hey, you need to have my stylist on the show. You need to ask her about Kelly's getting shorter hair. She'll talk Kelly into it. She'll make it look amazing. And, oh, by the way, we can come on and tell the story about how I met my stylist, how we ended up working together where she's doing my hair and my clothes and I'm getting her promoted. And, you know, just go from there. And, of course, they haven't replied to me. I don't expect them to, but I do shit like that all the time. And after I press send, then I go, maybe I shouldn't have done that. But it's usually after I press. And that's one of the things I like to give talks on is a lot of people have these dreams. There's stuff like that they could do. You know, they could write somebody they want to have as their mentor. You know, they could sign up for a course. They could fill out those applications online for for writing retreats or for opportunities to better themselves. They could do that. But most people are afraid to press send. So one of my favorite talks is just press send. Don't let fear keep you from your dreams.
Right.
I love giving that talk.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, brother, we are getting stacked up against it with our time together, and I have enjoyed the hell out of this, man. I really appreciate getting an insight into your ride, and your journey, and your story.
Well, I've had fun doing it, too, and I'm impressed that you've gotten me so ranged up considering that I'm still not 100% well.
I told you we were going to have fun.
Yeah, right. By the way, ranged up is a carnival term. It means you pissed me off. Got me wound up, got me talking faster than I need to be.
No, you're good, man. I love it.
All right. Well, I've enjoyed this. And before I finish, I want to let you know how much I appreciate you because I know it takes a lot of damn hard work to start a podcast and to grow it to the point where it has the audience and the following like you do. And most people don't start out doing that thinking they're going to make it a source of their income. Most people start out doing it as a passion, something they need to do inside, and then it grows. So I want to applaud you for your work, and I appreciate you putting this show together and giving me the opportunity to be on it. So thank you.
Absolutely, brother. I really appreciate it. I'm humbled by that. Thank you. Here's how I like to wrap up every show, and I do stump some people with this, so be forewarned. If you were going to leave my audience with a quote, a phrase, a mantra, a saying, you know, something they can carry with them on their journey, especially when they're going through maybe their dark times and they're trying to figure out what to do with their life, what would be that quote or phrase you say, you know, as you're going through, remember this?
Okay, I'm glad you finished that explanation because until you got to the last part, I was like, okay, I got like 9 sayings I could give them. Which one do I use? But since you're talking about the dark times, here's my favorite one. When you need to find the positive in life, how do you find that positive? How do you find that happiness? It's simple. You find it the same way you find anything else. You find a positive place in your life by first deciding that it's there and then looking for it until you find it. If you lose the TV remote, you don't just go, oh, hell, it's gone. I'll never find it again. I'm going to watch whatever's on TV. No, you start tearing up the couch cushions looking for it. If you don't find it, you call the family into the room and go, hey, y'all help me find this thing. And, you know, eventually you may have to decide, okay, we can't find it. We know it's here somewhere. We're going to look for it again tomorrow, or we're going to watch what's on, or we're going to go outside and do something else besides watch TV. There's lots of different answers. But the main point there is when you need to find that positive in your life, you have to decide that it's there and keep looking for it until you find it.
Awesome. Awesome, brother. I really appreciate that. And that's huge. And I like that philosophy. So, brother, seriously, thank you. I'm looking forward to continuing being friends and following your story and journey. We will share the stage at some point, man. And I'm just looking forward to continuing calling you a buddy, a pal, and a friend, man. Thanks for coming on the show.
All right. Well, I look forward to that. And I also look forward to at some point having you on my show. What's your excuse that people can find out about over at theblindblogger.net?
Beautiful, brother. I would love to do that. We'll absolutely. And we'll put all your notes and everything in the show notes so everybody can find all your stuff.
All right. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
All right.
Lots of fun.
Thanks, brother.
Thanks thanks for listening to Donnie Success Champions podcast. If you'd like to hear more about our current guest today, or if you'd like to hear stories from our other guests on the show, come hang out with us on our website at successchampspodcast.com. I really appreciate you tuning in. If you need to reach out to me for any reason, you can catch me at Donnie@DonnieBoivin.com.